Nowhere was the power of Norfolk and Western steam more evident than on the main line between Roanoke and Norfolk, Virginia. Along this route lies the famed Blue Ridge Grade. During the steam era, the ultimate proving ground where giant steam locomotives battled gravity in the shadow of the Blue Ridge Mountains. This is episode 10 of the N&W saga, part of season 2 of the Revival Steam podcast. I'm Alec Butler, the narrator, host, and sound editor of this fictional railroad series where words and sound bring to life a 21st century America in which steam locomotives still haul revenue trains. And in this episode, we return to one of the most dramatic stretches of railroading in the East. Before we step into the sounds and imagination of future steam operations, a brief history is essential. This segment of the Norfolk and Western Railway Mainline, today part of Norfolk Southern, began as the Norfolk and Petersburg Railroad in 1858. Through a series of mergers that ultimately formed the N&W, the route became legendary for heavy coal traffic moving east toward the Tidewater at Norfolk. Two locations defined operations along this line. Roanoke was the western anchor, home to the famed N&W shops where the last mainline steam locomotives in America were constructed. Crewe is a vital servicing hub where steam locomotives were inspected, repaired, and turned for their next assignments. But the defining feature of this stretch of railroad was the Blue Ridge Grade, known simply as the Hill to N&W crews. With a ruling grade of 1.2%, it demanded strategy and power. Eastbound trains departing Roanoke would roll toward Boaz Siding, where a Y-Class 2882 helper would couple onto the rear. Together, the road engine and the helper would assault the 8.5-mile climb to the summit. At the crest, the helper would cut off, sometimes on the fly while the train was still moving. Then the helper would drift downgrade as the road freight pressed eastward toward Norfolk. This daily ritual continued until 1959. The west slope of Blue Ridge became a pilgrimage site for photographers, filmmakers, and audio recordists, determined to preserve the final thunder of American mainline steam. Among them was Winston Link, whose dramatic night photography and rare steam sound recordings captured the N&W at its zenith. While those original recordings cannot be used here, they are preserved and available through the Winston Link Museum in Roanoke. Now let us set aside history and return to imagination. The first revival steam event on this legendary stretch is known as the August Spectacular, scheduled for the second full week of August, just as summer begins to fade. 5 days, 5 chances to relive and reinvent steam on the N&W Mainline. Day 1 will feature passenger and freight trains moving east toward Petersburg, marking the ceremonial return of revenue steam to the route. Day 2 is the long-awaited moment as steam revenue trains once again climb the Blue Ridge Grade for the first time since 1959. Day 3 will feature 4 passenger trains operating between Roanoke and Norfolk. There will not be any action on Day 4. But on Day 5, freight operations dominate the east side of Blue Ridge, where coal tracks and manifest trains echo across the Piedmont. This episode is a tribute to the giants of the Norfolk and Western, and to those who stood trackside in the final days of steam. So settle in, pour yourself a drink, and close your eyes. Listen for the exhaust, hear the helper coupling on behind you, and imagine what it must have felt like to stand beside Winston Link and others as the Iron Horse made its final stand against time. Let's begin. We arrived in Norfolk, Virginia over the weekend and spent the late afternoon resting, preparing for what is to come. Now it's day 1, Monday, August 11th, 6:14 a.m. We're standing outside Amtrak's Harbor Park Station in the gray light of the early morning. Amtrak Northeast Regional Train number 84 is preparing for its run to Petersburg. It waits at the platform behind Tribute K2 Streamlined 482 number 124. The engine stands tall and composed, steam drifting lightly into the humid tidewater air. The segment begins with a smooth departure, a gentle lift of the exhaust, a deep, steady cadence as the big mountain engine begins to roll west. Nearby, a Tribute S1A 080 number 292 is already at work, switching coaches for other Amtrak and RS passenger trains. The sharp bark of its exhaust and the clank of couplers echo across the yard. It's early. The city is only beginning to wake. There is background noise, distant traffic, platform announcements, and the murmur of passengers. But let it fade. Focus instead on the rhythm of number 124, the hiss of steam, the metallic shuffle of drivers on jointed rail. Ignore everything else. Just listen and enjoy. Two hours later, it's 9:15 a.m. We've traveled 58 miles west to Waverly, Virginia, positioning ourselves for a trio of freight movements. The first to appear is westbound empty grain train 41N, moving from Norfolk toward Blair Yard in Fostoria, Ohio. At its head is A-Class 2664, number 1218, the sole surviving member of the legendary A-Class fleet. And then you hear it. The traditional Norfolk and Western hooter whistle, long, low, and haunting. It rolls across the flat Virginia countryside seconds before the locomotive comes into view. Number 1218 advances with authority, drivers biting into the rail as she lifts a long chain of empty grain hoppers destined for the Midwestern plains where the harvest season waits. The exhaust is sharp but measured, not a mountain assault, just steady freight speed. Yet even on level ground, the A-Class carries its presence. A survivor, a machine built for coal tracks and fast freights, now leading grain empties back toward Ohio as if the steam era never ended. Listen to the rhythm. The hooter fades behind us, and 41N heads west. It's nearly noon. We're still at Waverly, waiting for something special. A high-speed meet. 2 freight trains, both powered by Class A giants of the Norfolk and Western Railway. The first to arrive is eastbound loaded grain train 40N, storming towards us behind Tribute A number 1240. The stack talk is sharp and urgent, heavier, deeper than the empties we heard earlier. This one is working. 40N thunders past, with loaded hoppers and drivers pounding, exhaust echoing across the fields. And then, 10 seconds later, from the opposite direction, comes westbound trailer train 271, a fast single-stack piggyback consist led by Tribute A number 1232. She doesn't glide, she attacks. Number 1232 rushes past like a hammer. Fast, forceful, unapologetic. The exhaust is tighter, quicker, the cadence almost frantic compared to the loaded grain drag. 2 massive articulateds, opposite directions, seconds apart. The air trembles long after both trains have cleared the scene. This is not preserved steam. This is not excursion theater. This is an awe-inspiring revenue steam action. Alive, synchronized, and unapologetically powerful. Our final stop of the day is Petersburg, 22 miles northwest of Waverly. It's 5:39 p.m. The late afternoon light has softened, and the heat of the day is finally beginning to ease. Amtrak Regional number 88 waits at the platform. Moments later, Tribute J484 number 613 backs down, steam drifting low as the coupler closes with a solid metallic clank. The Norfolk and Western's most graceful passenger locomotive has arrived to handle the remainder of the run to Norfolk. The segment begins after a quick air test. The departure is smooth, confident, almost effortless. The J accelerates with dignity, her exhaust crisp but refined, carrying the train eastward as twilight settles over the line. With number 88 gone, the platform grows quiet. We will take our time here, enjoy dinner in Petersburg, reflect on a full first day of steam, before continuing west to Lynchburg, arriving around 8 p.m. Day 1 comes to a close, but tomorrow is the moment we've all been waiting for, the Blue Ridge. Day 2 begins. It's Tuesday, August 12th. By 10 a.m., an hour after breakfast in Lynchburg, we've positioned ourselves in Montvale, Virginia, a quiet mountain town just below the summit of the Blue Ridge Grade. This is where the real action begins. Far down the mountain, you hear it first, a distant rhythmic exhaust working against gravity. The first steam-powered train of the day is on the move. Empty NS Coal Train 797. At the head end, Tribute A number 1223, fast freight power built for moments like this. On the rear, Y4A number 2101, shoving hard as helper, drivers digging in as the train begins its assault on the grade. This is the Blue Ridge Grade, once the ultimate proving ground for fans of the Norfolk and Western, once the stage for the final thunder of mainline steam. And now, in this imagined 21st century, revenue steam freight trains are back. The exhaust grows sharper, heavier. Two articulateds working in concert, one pulling, one pushing. Steel and steam echoing through the mountains just as they did decades ago. So take a breath, close your eyes, listen to the cadence of number 1223 on the point. Feel the shove of number 2101 from behind. The hill lives again. Relax and experience this unforgettable return to Blue Ridge steam with us. 1 hour after train 797 clears the mountain, we make our way to the summit, Blue Ridge, Virginia Station. The wind is stronger up here, cooler, and then we hear it. Not one exhaust, but two. An unmistakable Norfolk and Western steam doubleheader climbing hard towards the crest. The sound rolls through the trees long before the locomotives appear, deep, synchronized, and relentless. About a mile away, loaded NS coal train 796 is digging into the grade. On the point is Tribute Y6A number 2167. Behind her, Class A Tribute number 1234. Two freight articulates working in unison, finishing what feels like the first true steam versus Blue Ridge contest since 1959. The exhaust sharpens as they near the summit. Stag talk echoes off the hillsides. Drivers pound. Sand hits the rail. It is raw. It is powerful. It is everything Blue Ridge once represented. They storm past in a cloud of heat and thunder. But then, a harsh modern snarl. NS diesels rush by with another empty coal train, their low growl cutting straight through the faded cadence of the doubleheader. The spell breaks. Later, hoping for cleaner audio and a better vantage point, we reposition in the eastern mountain town of Thaxton. But again, frustration. Another diesel freight growls past the same steam-powered train, interrupting what would have been a perfect sequence. Such is the reality of sharing the line with Norfolk Southern's unpredictable freight schedule. Yet even with the interruptions, we stay focused, because between the diesel roar and the modern traffic patterns, something extraordinary is happening. The sound of Norfolk and Western steam has returned to the Blue Ridge grade, and when those articulated exhausts sing together on the mountain, nothing else truly matters. After lunch in Thaxton, we continue east to Lowry, Virginia. And there, completely unexpected, is something we hadn't planned for. Tribute K3482 number 210. Originally built by the Norfolk and Western Railway in 1926, the K3 class was eventually sold to several other railroads. None of the originals survive today, which makes the sight of this tribute locomotive all the more remarkable. We can hear her exhaust in this sequence, a measured, steady exhaust. Not racing, not straining, but switching. Number 210 is assigned to NS Local Freight V04, heading eastbound toward Lynchburg's Kinney Yard on its return trip from Roanoke. The sound is different from the articulants we've heard all day. Shorter wheelbase, quicker cadence, lighter on her feet. A mountain type built for versatility. We consider setting up for a longer sequence, but word from the crew is that switching here is taking longer than expected. So we scale back. A few clean minutes of audio, no overreach, no forcing the moment. Sometimes the best rail fanning decision is knowing when to step aside. As evening approaches, we reflect on day 2. Yes, there were some frustrations, diesel interruptions, missed sequence, and imperfect timing. But something historic happened today. For the first time since 1959, revenue steam freight trains worked the Blue Ridge Mountains once again. Not as an excursion, not as a staged performance, but as part of the rhythm of the railroad, and that alone makes this day unforgettable. Day 3 begins, Wednesday, August 13th. Our focus now shifts from coal drags and mountain battles to passenger speed, chasing varnish between Roanoke and Norfolk. It's 6:40 a.m. The sun is rising behind us, casting long golden light across the western slope of the Blue Ridge grade. We are positioned just south of Blue Ridge Station, overlooking a sweeping S-curve carved into the mountainside, one of the most dramatic pieces of railroading geometry on the line. And then, a whistle. Clear, bright, confident. Amtrak Northeast Regional Train 134 is approaching. At the head end is Tribute J number 606, streamlined, balanced, and built for moments exactly like this. The whistle echoes across the valley as she rounds the first curve, drivers flashing in the early light. Unlike yesterday's grinding assault uphill, this is different. This is control. The J crests the grade with authority, exhaust sharp but refined. not fighting gravity now, but mastering it. Moments later, she tips over the summit and begins the easy descent toward Lynchburg. Passenger cars follow in perfect rhythm along the S-curve, sunlight glinting off stainless steel. This is Norfolk and Western passenger power at its finest. Speed, elegance, and mountain railroading in harmony. Listen to that whistle again as she disappears down the grade. Morning has arrived on the Blue Ridge. After a short travel break, we reposition in Bedford, Virginia. Our next move is chasing the second passenger train of the morning, the ours-related local running between Roanoke and Lynchburg and back again. Waiting at the station is Tribute K482 number 137. If the J is refined and aerodynamic, the K is practical and purposeful, built for dependable passenger service across the system. The sequence begins as the engineer opens the throttle and number 137 answers with a spirited bark. The exhaust is crisp and lively, lighter than the articulates of yesterday, but more energetic than the streamlined J. The driver wheels grip. The train eases forward, and within seconds, the mountain is striding eastward out of Bedford, building speed with confidence. This is local passenger power at its best. Quick acceleration, balanced motion, and just enough drama to remind you that steam is still very much alive on this railroad. We have moved east again, now positioned in Sprout Spring, Virginia, awaiting the third passenger train of the morning. It's 10:30 a.m. The countryside is calm. A gentle breeze moves through the trees, and the only sound is the steady chorus of late summer birds, layered, conversational, almost rhythmic. For the moment, everything seems peaceful. Then, a whistle. Clear, commanding, the birds fall silent. Approaching from the west is the RS-related passenger train running from Roanoke to Norfolk. At the head end is Tribute J number 605, streamlined, powerful, unmistakable. The exhaust builds as she rounds the curve, echoing across the open fields. The cadence is steady but purposeful, not limbering, not racing, simply moving with authority. Nature yields to steam. The train sweeps past, stainless steel flashing in the sun, and the birds cautiously resume their conversation once the last car clears. A short time later, we catch the train again, this time from Pamplin City, Virginia. Number 605 departs the station with a sound only a steam train can deliver. A rising exhaust beat, a deep rolling cadence as the throttle opens, the sharp, triumphant bark of a passenger locomotive accelerating away from a stop. It's the kind of departure that lingers in the air long after the train itself is gone. And in that moment, there's no question. Steam belongs here. We break for lunch in Petersburg around noon, a brief pause before the final chase of the day. By mid-afternoon, we're back in motion, heading east to Waverly, Virginia. One more passenger movement awaits, Amtrak Regional number 95. On the point this evening is Tribute J Class number 607. The light is softer now, late afternoon drifting towards evening. We don't see her at first, we hear her. A long, resonant whistle, echoing off Waverly's grain elevators, bouncing between steel silos and open sky before the locomotive itself comes into view. It's a sound both industrial and musical. Number 607 glides through town with confidence, exhaust crisp, drivers steady, stainless steel consoles rolling behind her in perfect rhythm. The chase continues east towards Norfolk, and at 7:24 p.m., as the daylight begins to fade, we position ourselves one final time. Regional 95 makes its final arrival at Norfolk Station. Brakes whispering, rods slowing, steam drifting upward into the evening air. It has been an exciting day, exploring machines that pay tribute to what many consider the finest passenger steam locomotive design ever built. As number 607 eases to a stop, and the last echoes fade into the Norfolk twilight, Day 3 comes to a graceful close. Tomorrow the rhythm shifts again. But tonight, the whistle still lingers in memory. Day 4 arrives, Thursday, August 14th. Today is a scheduled day off for both the revival steam crews and for us. After 3 days of motion, whistles, and mountain echoes, the railroad grows quieter. Across the system, locomotives rest in yards and terminals. Boilers cool. Running gear is inspected. Valve motion is examined and adjusted. Routine maintenance, the unseen discipline that keeps steam reliable, takes center stage. Even in this imagined 21st century, steam demands care. Meanwhile, our own schedule shifts from chasing trains to sharing stories. We travel from Norfolk back to Lynchburg, reflecting on the week's highlights along the way. In the late afternoon, we deliver a presentation, recounting the return of revenue steam to the Blue Ridge, the synchronized thunder of doubleheaders, the elegance of the J's at speed. It is a different kind of railroad day, quieter, intentional, necessary. Because tomorrow, our focus returns to the freight trains, and the Blue Ridge will once again echo with hard-working steam. Activities resume in earnest on Day 5, Friday, August 15th, our final day. It's 7 a.m. in Thaxton, Virginia, but the morning does not begin quietly. Rain falls steadily over the eastern slope of the Blue Ridge. Equipment cases are covered. Microphones are shielded. Every movement is careful and deliberate. Wet ballast and slick ground demanding respect. Steam in the rain carries a different mood, heavier, more dramatic. Just as we finish setting up, the first movement of the day announces itself, not with a whistle, but with a deep, rolling exhaust muffled slightly by the storm. NS local freight V04 is climbing west from Lynchburg toward Roanoke. At the head end is Tribute Y3 2882 number 2051. If yesterday was elegance and speed, this is raw freight muscle. The Y3's exhaust is slower, heavier than the A-class, a deliberate pounding cadence that matches the wet rail conditions. You can almost hear the careful throttle handling as the engineer eases power to prevent slipping. Rain hisses against hot boiler metal. Drivers grip cautiously. Despite the weather, number 2051 does not hesitate. She chugs through Thaxton with steady determination, smoke and steam blending with low clouds as she begins the climb up the eastern slope of the Blue Ridge. It's not flashy, it's not theatrical, it's work. Hard, wet mountain railroading, exactly the kind of scene that defined the Norfolk and Western in its prime. And on this final morning of the August spectacular, the mountain answers once again with the sound of steam. Our next three soundtracks follow NS Manifest 19M, a westbound freight running from Crewe, Virginia to Elkhart, Indiana. In this imagined future, Norfolk and Western steam rotates through assignments before scheduled power changes. For this segment of the journey, up to Roanoke, 19M is led by Tribute Y6B number 2178, a true heavy articulated. It's 9 a.m. at the NS Kinney Yard in Lynchburg. Rain continues to fall, steady, persistent. Tribute Y6B 2882 number 2178 waits at the head of Manifest 19M, a long string of mixed freight stretching into the gray distance. The Y6B was built for tonnage, and you can hear it. The throttle opens cautiously. Wet rail requires patience. The exhaust is deep and deliberate, slower than the A-Class, more powerful than the Y3. A freight locomotive designed to move weight, not win races. Couplers tighten down the line. Slack runs in. Then, the entire Constance begins to roll. Rain hisses on the boiler jacket as number 2178 eases 19M westward out of the yard. It's not dramatic mountain assault. It's disciplined, controlled power. Steam working exactly as intended. Later, at Bedford, the rain has light, but the skies remain overcast. We hear 19M before we see it, a rolling rhythmic exhaust echoing off the damp hillsides. The Y6B is now settled into mainline pace. The cadence is steady, almost hypnotic. Water vapor trails low behind the engine, blending with the lingering mist. As 19M passes, you can hear the mixed freight composition: boxcars, covered hoppers, tank cars, each adding its own metallic texture beneath the exhaust beat. It's not as explosive as a bluish assault, but it's authentic. Working steam on the mainline in real weather, hauling real tonnage. By the time we reach Thaxton, the rain has returned in heavier sheets. The atmosphere is darker now, more dramatic. Number 2178 approaches with authority, exhaust sharper as the grade begins to stiffen toward the west. Water sprays from the drivers. The stack talk cuts cleanly through the rainfall. For a moment, the entire valley feels suspended between eras. Modern freight logistics carried forward by a classic Norfolk and Western steam design. The train thunders past, rain and steam mixing into a single cloud of motion. It may not rival the spectacle of double-headers on Blue Ridge, but steam locomotives working hard in the rain? That is its own kind of magic. It's now 11 a.m. The rain has finally stopped. Low clouds still cling to the ridgeline as we arrive in Blue Ridge Grade Station. The air feels washed clean, cool, damp, and quiet. We missed number 2178 and Manifest 19M cresting the summit. A small disappointment. But the mountain isn't finished with us. 15 minutes after setting up, we hear it. Distant, rhythmic, urgent. A hard-working exhaust climbing from the western slope. Another train is digging into the grade. It's NS Grain Train 40N. At the head end is Tribute Class A 2664, number 1226, finishing the long, arduous climb with a loaded consist in tow. The train began its journey at Blair Yard in Fostoria, Ohio. The engine was coupled at Bluefield, taking charge of the heavy grain loads for the mountain crossing. Now she presses eastward toward Crewe. The sound builds steadily. Sharp, rapid exhaust beats echo through the valley. This is not drifting downhill passenger elegance. This is pure freight horsepower. Number 1226 attacks the western slope with confidence. Stack talk crisp, drivers gripping drying rail, smoke lifting into clearing skies. No diesel interruption, no competing noise. Just uninterrupted Norfolk and Western steam power climbing the Blue Ridge grade. One of the first true mainline N&W revenue steam freights to conquer this western slope in decades. The locomotive bursts into view, exhaust synchronized perfectly with the curvature of the grade. Loaded grain hoppers follow, steel and tonnage responding to every pull of the throttle. For a few glorious minutes, the mountain belongs entirely to steam. The sound lingers even after the caboose clears the summit. And in that echo, you can hear it. The Blue Ridge has accepted the return of working steam. For our final soundtrack of this episode, we travel back east, returning toward Norfolk, for one last movement through Thaxton. The mountain has dried. The air feels clearer now. Approaching from the east is Train 43N, an empty grain train heading west from Norfolk toward the Midwestern farms. On the point today is Tribute Y6B number 2174, a heavy articulated built for exactly this kind of work. We hear her before she appears, a deep rolling exhaust building steadily as she begins the assault on the eastern slope of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The cadence is deliberate, powerful, measured, no frantic acceleration, just steady tonnage climbing the grade. As number 2174 storms past, exhaust echoing off the hillsides, the sound fills the valley in a way only a Y-class can. Empty grain hoppers rattle behind her, stretching westward toward Roanoke and beyond. It's a spectacular finale. Working steam on the Blue Ridge, not preserved, not posed, but alive in motion. And with that sound fading into the mountains, our August spectacular draws to a close. This marks the end of our episode and a successful Norfolk and Western revival steam event. Despite a few minor frustrations, diesel interruptions, weather challenges, missed moments, the first visit has accomplished something extraordinary. It has shown us what it might sound like if steam had truly returned to the Blue Ridge grade, the very stretch of railroad made legendary in the 1950s, before dieselization changed American railroading forever. For a few days in August, the mountain echoed once again with articulated exhaust, hooter whistles, and the rhythm of drivers gripping the steel rail. And we believe this is only the beginning. In the upcoming episodes, we will return to Blue Ridge in September and October to continue documenting Norfolk and Western steam in action, bringing the N&W saga in Season 2 of the Revival Steam podcast towards its conclusion. Before we sign off, I extend my sincere thanks to James Ramsey, Clover House Productions, Allan Sherry, David Sadowski of the Trolley Dodger, Jay Winn, Daylight Sales, Beaty Brown, and the Pilot to Tender Record Company for creating or allowing the use of the remarkable sounds that made this episode possible. The Blue Ridge grade has spoken again, and no further words are necessary. I'm Alec Butler of Revival Steam. Until our next adventure on the mountain, see you next time.